Let's kick off. So I'm Stuart Easton. I'm the CEO and one of the founders here at Transparent Choice. As most of you probably know, even though we're kind of a pure software company, we focus on project prioritization software in particular. We try and do a whole lot of, host a bunch of thought leadership work, basically sharing back to the community best practices from the best speakers we can find. And the best we could do today was Joe Push. For those of you who don't know Joe's a bit of a rock star in project land. Joe runs a podcast, a radio show, a consulting company, and a whole bunch more. And in fact, the podcast, Joe, you just did your 100th podcast, right?
Yeah, we just knocked out 100 episodes, which brings us over 5 years. So a lot of fun.
You had a scary statistic for how many listens to the podcast you'd had over that 5 years.
We hit 40 million, and I've stopped counting. I said, once you hit that many, you don't have to count anymore. But yeah, we're very thankful to everybody who's spent the time listening to the show. It's been great.
Absolutely. So Joe has just a wealth of experience to draw from, and has hosted all kinds of really interesting people, which I don't know about you, Joe, but I always find these things great because I always learn from these sessions as well. So today we're going to be talking about the PMO journey, and Joe's going to be kind of looking at kind of the operational side of the business and how mature that is versus kind of the project delivery side of things, and how much how mature that is relative to the operational side of the business, and just explore the journey for how we get from here where we are to being far more mature as a community and as a little industry, if you like. So Joe, would you like to introduce yourself, or if you're happy with that one, why don't we just dive in?
Yeah, let's just jump in. Okay, if I share my screen and pull it.
Yeah.
Let's share that. And let's get into slideshow mode. Is that showing through? Yep. Okay?
We can see that beautifully.
Awesome.
Excellent.
All right.
And I'm going to keep an eye on chat, everybody. So if you have questions, do just drop them into the chat, and I will put them to Joe as we go through, or keep some of them to the end, depending on the context and the timing. So yeah, off you go, Joe.
Absolutely. So certainly thank you, Stuart, for having me back again. It's kind of an annual tradition for us to be able to reconnect. So I thank you for that. And today, we're out at client sites all the time working on project delivery. And as we're having those discussions, the project team always brings up the operations side of the house. And they always bring up how well they're organized and supported within the organization. So we started doing some research on this and starting to explore it more. And what we've come to realize is that historically, organizations have focused more of their resources, whether that's financial or people or time investment, into operations as opposed to project delivery. So let's get on the same page to make sure that we're speaking the same language. I know we've got people from around the world. So just to align on that, operations would be the ongoing daily activities within your organization that either helps to produce or support the goods or services that your company creates. Straightforward. The other work that the organization does is not the ongoing daily activity, right? It's the unique activity. It's the one-off activity. It's the project work. That's unique. And as we all know, there's different definitions for project management out there. But in our case, we view project delivery as strategically or tactically aligned change within the organization that somebody has decided that we're going to do. And that is different than what we do during operations. So how do we do what we do every single day? And then, oh, by the way, we need to invest time and money and people's skill sets into delivering on these unique project endeavors. So historically, over time, organizations have really focused their perspective and their investments onto the operations side of the house. With the advent of the project economy and a lot of discussion that other great leaders are having out there, we're starting to see this shift in focus now to the project delivery side. But what we haven't seen yet is something that takes time, right? It's maturity. Operations side of the house, right? You have known outcomes. You're working at efficiency and cost controls. You're trying to create stability so that you have consistency and deliverability. And because of all of that focus over historical time of your company, you've established a chief operating officer, right? There's somebody in charge of making sure that the company is going to operate efficiently and profitably. They've helped to structure process and define SOPs that are going to exist in the organization. And then your organization has aligned their financial processes to how are we going to do this, right? What is the cost of goods sold? What is the inventory turn cost? What is our revenue per widget we've created? All of the financials in your organization are tied around your good or services that you produce. On the project delivery side, as opposed to known outcomes, we're creating change. As opposed to having a focus on efficiency or cost control, project delivery is about establishing value from that change. And instead of dealing with stability and consistency, we're really working in the unknown. So the skill set of a project delivery resource is almost the opposite of the skill set of an operations person, right? Organizationally, we focused how do we build these operations people and not how do we build project delivery people.
Joe, can I just check that what you're intending to show us is still the title page?
Oh, no, that's a good...
You may be sharing the wrong screen.
Let's...
I just realized you've been talking for a few minutes.
Yep, let's go back and reshare.
That's cool. So just while you're doing that, Sean shared that you know, he struggles because, you know, this is something where, you know, he sees a kind of a competition for time and resource between the operations guys and the project delivery guys. Right? So
yeah. And let me just confirm, are you seeing the screen okay now? It should say operations versus project delivery.
We are, yeah.
Good. And Sean's point's correct, right? We have finite number of resources in our organization, and they all have operations jobs. And what we do when we create these projects that are approved by the organization is we pull part of that time away from them in their operations work to support project delivery work. And this goes to the point of maturity. If the organization hasn't matured their project delivery capabilities, then they're not very good at being able to understand how do we go about delivering projects at the same time as we're doing our operations work. So this is what we're going to talk about today, right? Is we understand the operations, we understand how that's matured over time, but now we're on project delivery and there's all of these consultants out there, PMO Squad, one of them, and many others that are saying, we have a model to be able to measure your maturity. Here's what you are. You're a maturity level 2 organization, and here's where you need to go. And that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to dig into that now. So in order to do that, the project delivery side of the house, right, doesn't have a chief project officer. Very few organizations have accepted project delivery at that sense. So what they've created is the organization that supports project management, right, the PMO. The challenge we have, though, across the world is, what is a PMO? Is it a project management office, a portfolio management office, a program management office? Is it an ePMO? Is it a functional PMO? Is it a supportive PMO, a controlling PMO, a directive PMO? What are the tasks within the PMO, right? So there's a lot of change that happens from resources move from organization to organization. They bring with themselves their thoughts of what a PMO is. And that PMO may be different than the PMO you have in your organization. So we as an industry, we can't even align on the project delivery side of the house to say what a PMO is, what a PMO should do, who should lead the PMO, where the PMO should be aligned. So as we think about what's the impact of project delivery versus operations, we're already at a disadvantage because we don't have a way to to standardize how we approach that within organizations around the world. So each PMO that gets built at an organization becomes unique because there isn't a standard that they can fall back on, right? Accounting around the world, cash accounting is done the same way at organization to organization to organization. That's the way you do accounting. They've built generally accepted accounting principles for how to do accounting. We haven't done that.
So let me play devil's advocate for a minute then, because I'd suggest that actually the natural ally, the natural C-suite ally for the PMO should be the CSO, Chief Strategy Office, and which most large organizations will have. They may not have that title, but it's that role, because they are all about change. How do we get from where we are today to where we want to be tomorrow? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and we are seeing PMOs being rebranded as SROs, Strategy Realization Office. So I'm completely on board with that. However, I think a lot of organizations don't have a chief strategy officer either, right? I think there are some, certainly, but it's not as common as the chief financial officer or the chief legal officer or the chief information officer, right? Organizations recognize strategy, they recognize delivery, but they still, again, haven't made that investment onto that side of the house to truly embrace it worldwide as something that's accepted across all organizations.
Yeah. And actually, Sean makes a really interesting point on that as well, which is that, the CSO concept works really well if you're doing the big projects, but isn't great for kind of the maintain the business and the enhancement type projects.
Yeah. Well, and remember, the resources we've staffed and trained our organizations full of are operations-minded people. So it's not just we have to build a delivery function. We have to change a mindset within the organization of a change acceptance. And how do we work in an unknown, changing world compared to everything that's always happened at this organization has been consistent, repeatable, over and over and over, making our widgets. So we can't just snap our fingers as executives and expect that we're going to have as good a maturity side on project delivery as we have in operations. So again, we come to maturity. If we have project delivery, we have PMOs running them, but we don't even have alignment on what a PMO is. The question is, how do we then measure PMO maturity? If you're a portfolio management office versus a project management office, and I come in with a model to measure maturity, how can that model measure two completely different organizations to determine if you are a level 2, a level 4, a level 5 maturity, right? So how can we possibly measure maturity when there isn't anything that we can be rooted to be able to tie maturity? There's a lot of great models out there, right? Here's a couple of models. You can just go out and Google PMO maturity models and you'll see a bunch of them. And here's a couple of them, level 1, level 5, this one's got 9 types with 9 different levels. Where are you? Are you enterprise? And you try to find variety. But again, if each PMO is unique with a unique purpose, if we think back 3 years ago when we first got together, I talked about purpose-driven PMO. How can I measure maturity from one organization to another in any form of consistency so that we can build data and identify trends to be able to get smart about what we're doing on the project delivery side, to be able to learn from all of these different PMO delivery models? It's really a challenge because there isn't a model that can measure across all the varieties of PMOs that we have. So a Gartner maturity model is a great model, but does it fit for every different type of PMO that could be out there? I argue that no, it can't. It just isn't possible. So instead, what we're measuring is a snapshot in time, right? We're measuring on this given day with this given model. Here's what my consulting's assessment is of your PMO today. It doesn't take into context where you've been or where you're going or what the ask has been of your organization. If I'm a level 2 PMO and my boss thinks we should be a level 5 PMO, that snapshot means I'm probably going to be out of a job in 6 months unless I can get to where he or she wants. If the view is different and said, we're a level 2, but we're headed to level 4, and we're going to get there in 18 months because we're on a journey organizationally to mature our processes to get there. It's okay that I'm a level 2 PMO today. But if I don't view it as a journey and I view it as a snapshot, I'm deficient. The models capture deficiencies and put us into a status where we are today. And I think, again, that's a flaw with all of these maturity models that we have. So if we think about journeys versus that, again, here's a maturity model, and they've got 15 items that they're measuring, and they come in and, whoop, went backwards one, and they give you a score of 1 through 5 on each of those different items. As a PMO leader, if a consultant came to me and showed me this information, I don't even know what I would do with it, right? They're telling me I'm level 1 here for resource management, but in reporting, I'm doing great. So am I doing great reporting on bad resource management? You know, am I doing a good job to show how bad I'm doing there? But I'm doing kind of okay in planning, and I'm doing better in governance. I mean, there's so many variables here. It doesn't really give me any sort of information because, again, it's a snapshot at that moment in time. What we really want to be able to do is understand, where are we today on this journey, this continuum that we are as an organization? And where are we headed, so that as we hit certain milestones, I then have the ability to share with the organization, here's where we're going, here's the things we need to do to be able to get there. And we'll dig into these different milestones over here on the left, coming up in a few more slides. So I'd like to take credit and say this is my great idea for this journey perspective and how organizations go through this. But really what I did is I studied some of the best PMOs in the world. Every year, there's a fantastic organization out there, the PMO Global Alliance, and they do a competition every year to help identify the best PMOs in the world. So 2018, 2019, 2021, you can see the 4 different winners that they've had. And I'm a judge in that competition, one of many, right? There's hundreds of judges that are out there helping evaluate these PMOs. But one of the criteria that's used is the PMO's journey. How have they progressed to where they are today compared to where they started? And this is used as a category that we judge the PMOs on. Every one of these 4 that were winners are fantastic PMOs today, but they weren't when they started. They weren't the second year they existed. Most of them are 10 years in to where they are as a PMO now to achieve this best honor of best PMO in the world.
And to be clear, you're talking about PMO, the organization, not the person.
That's right. The organization within so their project delivery side of the house has now caught up to the operations side of the house. And collectively, the organization is crushing it, right? They're doing great on operations. They're doing great on project delivery. Organizationally, they've changed. It's not an individual, to your point, Stuart, right? It's how do we change as an organization? So imagine if Dubai municipality, and I think we had somebody joining us from Dubai, they've got the past 2 years, different organizations within that country have won the award for best PMO. So something's happening in Dubai. There's something in the water that they've figured out how to get PMOs built and established over time. But imagine back in year 2 or year 3, if Gartner or some other organization had come in and said, your PMO is a level 2 PMO. The CEO of that organization says, well, that's not where we want to be. We want to be a level 5. I'm going to have to fire my PMO director. We're going to start over. And then in 2 or 3 years, they get evaluated again. And you're a level 2 PMO still. Damn, fire that one. And we're going to start over again. What they did is they gave the organization room to breathe, room to be able to mature over time, to identify what their strengths were, what their weaknesses are, and how to improve that over the organization. And over time, Manulife, Bradesco, Dubai Customs, Dubai Municipality have all been able to learn from their time to mature. It wasn't a snapshot that said where they were. It's the journey that's gotten them to where they are today. So we as PMO leaders have to become tour guides, right? In addition to all of our organizational responsibilities of our PMO team, We have to help the organization go on this journey with us, right? Because the PMO is often viewed through the lens of where are you today, right? The snapshot mindset, versus what we want to say is where we're going. If we're not able to help communicate that message to our executive and our peers, they're always going to view us, where are we today? You're the organization that comes and takes my resources. You're the organization that doesn't prioritize our projects the right way. You're the organization that is overhead. You're costing us money, right? That's today's snapshot. As a tour guide, you have to say, that may be true, but here's where we're going. Here's the steps we're going to take to get to the point where we're not a cost center, we're an investment center. We're not working on today's project, we're working on the organization's strategic delivery outcomes, right? The mindset shift there is on us as PMO leaders. We are organizational change agents. We're not just changing software, we're changing the organization, right? It's an operations organization. We're now bringing them into the project delivery side of the house, and they need a tour guide to help them on that journey, and that's us. If we don't do that job, they're always going to view us with a snapshot perspective.
I just want to jump in for a second, Joe, if I may, because I know one or two of the people on the call who are in sort of project offices that are focused in very operational areas of the business. So, for example, one of the folks on the call, you know who you are, runs projects that are looking at a particular manufacturing process, and so the projects are intended to improve that manufacturing process, right? So you said there that this is about strategy and all the rest of it. So I just want to make the point that even though that feels like a very operational thing to be doing, to that part of the business, the changes that you're making are strategic, right? Strategy doesn't just exist up in the C-suite, right? It gets translated down the organization. So in manufacturing, the strategic goals up at the top of the organization would be something about, financial metrics, efficiency, customer satisfaction, right? And when that trickles down to manufacturing, that comes down to sort of specific metrics about, the cost to manufacture, quality rates, failure rates, and so on and so, waste rates, and so on and so forth, right? So even at the operational level, right, the stuff you're doing is supporting your strategy, and it has a strategic impact on your operations team, or on your factory's performance, or on your business unit's performance. So even when you're down at that sort of operational level, you are having this level of strategic impact. And I don't want to derail it too much, but if you follow this through, right, if you do a project and that project, I don't know, saves $1 million of operating cost, right, just to make maths easy, right? So great, we can pat ourselves on the back and say we saved $1 million. No, you didn't save $1 million. You saved $1 million this year, $1 million next year, $1 million a year after, and so on. So the value of that goes on and on and on. And so if you can get kind of an extra $1 million each year out of the same resources, right, by the end of year 5, you're getting $5 million a year out of the exact same investment.
That's right.
And so getting, huge amounts of extra value out of the same resources is massively strategic to any organization, right? That level of efficiency. And so being able to talk about the journey from where we are to how we're going to have that kind of strategic impact is tremendous. That's going to get you all kinds of support across the organization. So while you go into the next slide, Joe, I'm going to ask everybody just to jump on and just sort of share, if you would, first of all, whether or not you think your organization sees you as being at a point, or if the organization understands that you're on a journey. And anyone who has got the organization to buy into the fact they're on a journey, it'd be great just if you put in a line or two about how you got there or what that journey is. And let's see if we can learn from the rest of everyone else who's on the call. So come on, don't be shy, jump on there. Tell us if you view yourself, or if the organization views the PMO as being at a point or on a journey. And if you're on a journey, how did you get to there? Brilliant, Joe, carry on. Sorry, I told you I'd interrupt, didn't I?
You always do, and that's why I come back, because it's interactive, right? It's a great session.
Right.
So I love when you come in and add the additional perspective. The other part of this is we as people already understand this concept, right? I mean, and we're not creating a rocket science concept here where we're figuring out how to get man to Mars and live there, right? We ourselves are on a journey, right? We're born, we progress into toddler, into teens and young adulthood, and of course we mature into end of life. But there's certain points through that journey where we as adults, we were talking earlier, right? We both have kids that are 14, and my 14-year-old, here in the States, you have to be 16 to drive at the earliest. So I always ask him on the way to drive him to school. He's in the student council, so I have to drive him early a few days a week. And I say, hey, Zach, want to drive today? And he's like, no, I'm not ready, right? Because at 14, he's not mature enough to get behind a wheel and drive a vehicle yet. So even though I'm tired of driving him to school 3 days a week, I wish he could just take the car and go himself. We as people understand the journey, and his maturity level is not yet there. A tragic example here in the States, about a month ago, there was a 13-year-old girl who took the family car out for a drive and ran into a bus of college athletes, and all the athletes on the bus died. And this 13-year-old girl, for the rest of her life now, is going to have to deal with this memory of how she was responsible for the death of 10 or 20 different people, because she did something beyond her current maturity state, right? The snapshot in time was, you're 13, you're a great student, you're really mature for your age, you should be able to go drive. But in the view of a maturity, it's like, no, you're not quite there because you're not capable of doing the things you need to. So when we explain this to our executives, and we're the tour guide trying to explain the journey for them, I like to always talk to executives in non-project management terms. Bring up something that they get. They have children. Talk about your 19-year-old who's a college freshman who you wish could be 25. You wish they were smart enough to make those mature decisions that they need to make in time, but they're not. They're still 19. They're going to make 19-year-old decisions. Executives get that. Or as you've matured and you've understand and you've gained wisdom as a mid-career or late career individual, the way you perceive change is very differently than the 25 recent college grad fresh out of university that's trying to be a project manager. Both looking at it, but through a different lens because they've gone through this maturity journey. Before we jump into project management journey, though, thinking about that, I don't know, Stuart, if we had any good items come in on the chat that would be worthy of bringing up there.
Yeah, I think you might be going to cover Dean's a little bit later on. So okay. So Dean's up in Niagara, and he's kind of saying, this all resonates, but they're seen as an overhead. There's a recognition that they want to do a journey, but the question is, how do you get people, all the stakeholders and the different business units to buy into that journey?
Well, that's the key, right? So here we have the 5 milestones on the journey. I would say 2 answers for Dean. I think you said his name is right. One is, it's not your job. Right? It's your job to be the tour guide, but you don't own the tour. The executives own the tour. It's their job to make sure that everybody buys into what the project delivery part of the org. You don't own the different parts of the organization, but you have to make everybody be aware of that. To get that buy-in, you also want to bring value add to them, right? You have to be able to make something tangible for them to see that you're going to improve, because they're focused on operations. Right? I mean, that's the organization's focus, operations. We're going to keep churning out these widgets day after day after day. I support building those widgets. And now you, the project people, are coming over here to disrupt that. So there's a natural tendency to be away from that. So part of that change is organizational leadership to drive it, and then you as the tour guide to get them there. And I think we'll hit on some of that as well through this discussion.
Yeah. And actually, Amro asked makes the point that execs don't get project management. So how do we change that worldwide? And I think the answer is kind of the same. We don't. It's their tour. Our job as tour guides is to help them, not to change them, not to force them to follow our rules. If you want to have that kind of impact, then as PMO professionals, we need to be the translator between projectees and business, right? There are different languages, different expectations, different ways of behaving, and you are, in a way, the translator. So just like a good tour guide, I like this metaphor, Joe. I'm going to kill this by the end of the session. But just like a good tour guide, right? The tour guide is going to be able to speak English to the tourists, but also then speak Spanish or whatever country you're in to the local people, and to make sure that the tour goes well, right? So you've got to be able to do that translation, and you've got to understand both sides. So it's not the executive's job to learn about project management. It's the part of the value that PMO can bring is to be that bridge and to be that Babel fish, that translator.
Absolutely, and to be able to help them understand where we're at today, because they may be thinking project management based on your current circumstance as ad hoc project delivery in the organization, but where you want to take them is strategic project delivery. So you have to be able to paint that picture for them as the tour guide, as the translator, to let them know where you're headed, to be able to help them understand what changes the organization is going to need to make to be able to get there.
And part of the journey, actually, Robin's just shared part of his journey, Joe. So Robin's actually one of our customers, and they do some really cool work. And he's saying that part of their journey is doing project prioritization has forced them to really have strategic discussions and to have clarity strategically about what they're trying to do as an organization. And as soon as you do that, you then start to think about projects in terms of the cost and the investment, and what's and the phrase he uses is IT being an enabler for strategic focus and imperatives, right? So that sounds like so I'm delighted to hear that, Robin, because you and I haven't spoken for quite a while. So that's really great. Well done. But I think that kind of sums up this whole journey thing, right? Because Robin wasn't in that position 9 months ago, whenever it was that he started that journey. So well done, Robin, and let's have a few more stories like that, folks.
Absolutely, and it speaks to this slide here about maturity. Oftentimes, when we go in and consult with clients, they say, we're a mature PMO, we have portfolio management, or we have resource management. And I say, okay, show me. Let's do a Gemba walk like they use in the operations manufacturing side of the process. Let's walk your portfolio management process. And they'll say, okay, here's our portfolio, a spreadsheet with all of our projects on it. And we work on the high priority projects. I say, okay, how do you determine priority? Oh, well, an executive tells me what the priority is. How frequently does that change? Every week. Does anybody else get to contribute to the prioritization? No, it's always just the executive, right? So yes, you have portfolio management, but you don't do the small things within portfolio management to actually demonstrate that there's maturity there, right? Resource management's another one that always comes up as one of the biggest pain points from a PMO. And people will say, yeah, we have resource management. I request from our resource managers to get people's time on our projects. I said, that's fantastic. Great job. How often do they approve those? And, I don't know, maybe 10, 15%. Well, then you don't have resource management. Just because you have the process doesn't mean you actually have it. It's to constantly, consistently, reliably demonstrate that you're doing the small things that shows you have maturity. So that, again, that snapshot versus journey mindset. In the snapshot, you can say, today, every request I sent out was approved. Does that mean you have mature resource management? No, because historically, that's about 10%. You're not getting the small things that you need. So that's the perspective we try to think of when we think journey is, how do we do the small things to be able to demonstrate that we truly understand what we're doing? So organizationally, right? This isn't about project management. Project management is the context for an organizational change. Give an example. I love the show The Walking Dead. It's in its final season of The Walking Dead. And my wife always says, how can you watch a show about zombies? You're a grown man, you're an adult. Stop watching a zombie show. And I said, zombie is just the context. It has nothing to do really with zombies. It's about human survival. Project management is the same thing. Organizational maturity of project management, the setting, the context, the zombie, if you will, is project management. But the setting, really, the story is about organizational change and organizational acceptance of project delivery. Remember, operations, project delivery. Think project delivery maturity, not project management, and the organizational changes you have to take place. So we've identified through working with numerous clients over a decade now, and my peers in the industry, and the PMO Global Awards, participating in that and seeing the best of the best. There's 5 milestones that organizations go through on this journey. And the first one, we all start here, is ad hoc project management, right? You're doing project delivery in the organization. You know why? Every company does. It's impossible to exist as a company without project delivery. Every company does it, no matter your size, no matter your location, no matter your industry. But most of them, when they start out saying, we have operations, we're going to do something different. Change equals project. Somebody approved, we're going to go do it, we're going to go do it. They may not even have a project manager that works at the organization. They may have never had anybody trained in how to go deliver project management, but they take their smart resource, who's a subject matter expert, who people kind of rally around, and they've got good communication skills, and say, go get that done. Right? If you attend any conference, business conference anywhere, as a participant in the audience, not even project management related, and listen to the speakers talk, bring a notepad with you and just start doing tick marks for every time they mention the word project. They're not saying it in the sense of project management. They're saying it in the sense of it's not operations.
Or the word change, right? It's the same thing.
Exactly. Yeah.
The word change or the word project.
Because those are saying we're going to do project delivery. So all organizations, they don't have templates, they don't have a process, they don't have an SOP, they don't have project managers. They're ad hoc. They're delivering projects, but they're doing it just because they have to. No one's really thought about how should we do this efficiently, right? Just like car companies manufacture efficiently now. They're putting a manufacturing system and other processes in place where they've consciously said, here's how we're going to produce our widgets. At this milestone of your organization, no one's saying, how are we going to produce our project widgets? It's just happening because projects exist. But when you do that, all of a sudden somebody says, hey, you know that status report you created? That helped me understand where the project was. That was great. Thank you for doing that. On the next project you run, can you do that again? All of a sudden someone said, standardization. And they're used to that because they do operations. And what is operations? Standardized, consistent, repeatable production of the widgets that they produce. So they get standardization in the organization. The organization appreciates standardization. So now all of a sudden your ad hoc delivery is going to be requested. The organization is going to request, let's do projects the same way. Let's build a methodology. Let's have phases. Let's build sprints. Let's have templates. Let's have kickoff meetings. Let's have lessons learned or retrospectives. The organization's knowledge of operations now becomes a tool you can leverage to help build standardized project delivery. You can say, just like you've built an SOP that says how we're going to do invoicing, we need to build an SOP that says, here's how we're going to deliver projects. Everybody on board with using what we already do in an organization to help us do something consistently on the project side. Take our unknown project delivery world and try to build some consistency to it, and organizations accept that. That's standardizing project delivery. Milestone 2 on the journey. But once you've standardized, it doesn't mean they accept it. And Stuart, if you want to, yeah, you look like you had a comment there.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, and when you're standardizing it, I think it's important to realize that just like not every manufacturing process is the same, not every project delivery process should be the same, right? So if you're making artisan cakes, you're manufacturing, but your process is going to be very different to someone who's producing, iPhones or something at really, really high volume, right? So just a little word of caution around that. And Joe, I know you'll agree with this, is don't just go and take one of the standard methodologies and say, we're going to do everything in there.
Right.
Right size it, pick the stuff that makes sense, tailor it to your organization so that everything that you're doing as you're standardizing because it's adding value, not because it's in the latest version of PMBOK. Right?
That's right. Yeah, it has to be standardized project delivery for your organization. What fits for you? Absolutely 100% agree with that. And after you do that for a while, it becomes accepted, right? People say organizationally now, we expect that when you kick off a project, you're not just going to go do it. We have the standard templates that says phase one of the project, you're going to have a kickoff meeting with a project charter, and you're going to go deliver this, and you're going to do weekly status reports. That's the standardization component. But organizationally, has the organization really bought into that yet? Does that manager over in marketing really give up his or her resource? Or do they still push back? Do you go to portfolio meetings and people say, this project delivery stuff is hogwash? I don't buy into it. You're overhead and you're taking my people away from their day job. If they still say that, then the organization hasn't accepted it. You haven't reached the third milestone. The third milestone is the organization, just as they've accepted operations, also accepts project delivery. They know in order to hit their financial objectives for the year, they're going to do operations work and they're going to do delivery work. And they agree with all of the concepts of what you're going to do to be able to deliver projects. So you go ad hoc, we're just getting it done. Standardize, hey, there's a process for doing this. Organizational is, we actually agree with the standard delivery route and we're going to support that. So the organization has now reached milestone 3. Milestone 4 is the organization buys into it. And now what we do is we align our strategy to it. So if our strategy is 20% growth this year, where the organization says, what operationally will we do to get 20% growth this year? And which projects do we need to do to get 20% growth this year? We're going to staff, resource, support financially with the investments, both to achieve our strategy. And when we do our portfolio reviews, we're going to call out the projects and align them to the strategic objectives that we're trying to achieve. We're now aligning delivery and change within the organization to the strategic objectives that the organization's trying to achieve. It's that shift from tactical execution, the manager in his or her department who says, I need a raise this year, so I'm going to do a project in my department to make sure our department looks good. And at the end of the year, my performance review is going to come out. My boss is going to say, boy, Johnny, you did a fantastic job. Your throughput went through the roof and we're going to give you a merit increase. That's organizational acceptance of project management, but not alignment to the strategy, because the strategy says, Johnny, you didn't need to change anything in your department because we needed your resources to go work on that project that's going to give us 20% revenue growth for the company. You as the functional leader are willing to put your thoughts and benefits secondary to the strategic benefits of the organization. That's where the organization now, the performance reviews, the strategy alignment, the portfolio decisions, all of those things are working in concert to give you strategic project management, strategic project delivery for the organization.
Now, Joe, you've presented this as kind of 4 steps, as if it's nice and linear, but the world's not usually linear, right?
No.
And so we've seen situations, for example, where actually getting from step 1 to step 2 was facilitated and catalyzed and triggered by doing step 4, right? Mm-hmm. By doing that, really sorting out that prioritization and alignment piece. Suddenly the business wake up and realize that, oh, right, you mean projects are about our strategy? And that's tied to my bone. Okay, I got to pay attention to this, right? And suddenly you've got all the help you need. So and I don't think I'm guessing you didn't mean that it's always kind of a straight line journey, right? Everyone's journey is going to be different. And
Absolutely.
you can start at different points in this journey depending on.
And that's why we call it a journey. And that's why you, as the PMO leader or the tour guide, because when you let them know where we're headed, it helps them understand the steps they need to take to be able to get there. Each organization will move through the journey differently. Not all organizations will get to milestone 4. Some, because there's there's an organizational investment to go through the journey, right? Some organizations, again, 98% of the organizations in America are 100 employees or less. So for them, if you're an organization of 25 people, maybe your final destination on your journey is organizational acceptance. It may cost you too much money to invest to get to strategic delivery. So that's fine. Your journey ends at level 3. But know that what you need to do at level 1, level 2, level 3 to hit those milestones to get there. The 5th milestone, the holy grail, if you will, which very few PMOs reach, is where you're actually seen as value generation in your organization. This doesn't mean as you deliver projects, you're not creating value, right? Every project should be perceived to create value. But at level 5, the organization comes to the PMO and says, we know you're going to help us generate the value. You become that SRO, right? You become that organizational function that is explicitly part of the organization to deliver value for the company, right? You are a strategic decision within that company to be able to do that. This is the holy grail. Very few people get here. It's a long time, 5 to 10 years worth of effort to be able to get your organization to change and learn lessons and adapt and take on the steps necessary to be able to get there, right? You went ad hoc, you standardized, the organization bought into that. They saw value when you aligned a strategy. And now the organization says, what can we do from a delivery standpoint to generate value and get competitive advantage within our industry? Very different mindset than today, where it's very operations driven, where they say we're going to go and eliminate waste within our manufacturing process to gain competitive advantage. Now you're using the project delivery side of the organization to gain competitive advantage. You're actually using this as a value generation tool, as opposed to trying to, right, on operations, we're always looking to become more efficient, cost reduction, decrease waste. All of that is about efficiency. The project delivery, when you've nailed it at this level, is all about generating value. What are we going to do to generate value? 2 different mindsets, both equally important in an organization, right? You don't want to be wasteful in your cost and your spending and inefficient in your process. Operations needs to be great, needs to be operating at a high value, but so does project delivery. And when those 2 things work together, the organization can gain competitive advantage on both operations and project delivery work. So ultimately, it takes time, right? Again, as we think back to the PMO Global Awards and the PMOs who won the best PMO of the year, it wasn't a year or 2 and they were the winners, right? It took iterations of trial and error. How do we get the organization to accept this? It was in the comments. We understand this because we're on the project side of the house. How do I get the people in the organization to buy into that? It takes time. It takes a skilled, talented tour guide to make sure you bring them to the right stops on the tour to show them the benefits of what delivery can do for the organization. And over time, as they get those benefits, they then accept it. As they gain acceptance, they then want to align strategy to it, and so on till you get to your value generating. But it's the small things. It's not saying we're doing portfolio management. It's actually doing the small steps to do portfolio management consistently.
So Joe, there's kind of a whole discussion going on, which you probably haven't had a chance to read, but there's a good discussion going on about how people feel they've got kind of bits of this and different bits of the journey kind of nailed and other bits not complete. And then there's a general thread which I'm delighted by, which is people are struggling with prioritization. So come talk to me, I'll sort that out for you. But there's something that I think is I'm going to challenge your model, not because I think you don't get it, but just because the picture is drawn in a way that again makes it look quite linear. So I think some of this maybe is linear, but some of it isn't, right? So if you look at project execution, right, this I think is kind of these three steps, right, 1 to 3. And I think that probably is quite linear. It's really hard to do 3 without doing 1 reasonably well, and so on. And then when you get to that strategic bit, that's really, and I'm not surprised people are talking about project prioritization, because that's largely about strategic alignment, which is largely about prioritization and then resource management, allocating resources to the right stuff. And this one actually you can do independently of taking this journey, right? Because they're very different processes. They're not dependent on each other. It's even different people that do them, right? So you can take those 2 journeys independently at different speeds. And I've seen people start here. I've seen people start here. Both valid, absolutely valid. Do what's right in your organization. But I think the key thing is when you get to step 5, what step 5 is really telling me is that you've made it up into this top quadrant, right, where you're doing both of these correctly. And the PMI did a bit of research a few years ago where they compared, the very best performers with kind of the ho-hum performers. And, everyone did number 1. Everyone, and everyone was pretty much at level 2. Not sure everyone was at level 3. But the ones that really nailed it, the ones that were the top performers, they were at level 5, right? They did the project execution, but they also did that strategic and portfolio management dimension. And so, project execution can take you so far, but only so far, right? Last time you were on, Joe, you showed the project success rate chart. Do you remember the one where it's been, mid-60s for the last 20 years or something?
Yeah.
Right. And to break through that, you really have to do not just project management. Good project execution will get you up to there, but you have to do that strategic piece as well to break through that 70%, because it's the strategic piece that lets you unlock the extra value to make sure your resources are being used, not just being used, but being used efficiently, right?
So I'll say conceptually on what you've drawn up and talked about, Stuart, I agree 100%. What this journey is doing is actually asking us to view this with a different mindset. The strategic tactic, this is going to be strange to say this, the strategic tactical components of portfolio management happen in milestone 2, standardizing project delivery. Standardizing project delivery isn't just the delivery, the execution of the project. Remember, this is an organizational view of it. So organizationally, we've standardized how we prioritize projects to go deliver them. When you reach milestone 4, it's the organization has bought into the fact that our strategy will have projects. Not that we're going to do portfolio management at stage 4. You're doing that back in stage 2, in the milestone number 2 area. So I'm with you 100%. We're changing the mindset of a project manager of how do we execute and deliver projects. And the context now is how does the organization handle project delivery? So standardizing project delivery doesn't mean we deliver projects the same way. It's how does the organization execute on a project delivery side of the house? So I think we're in complete alignment. This is the difference of trying to create change in the project management industry of how we work about project management. We've so focused everything on the individual project and the individual project manager. We've not focused the time on the organization. What does the organization need to do? And that's where this one slightly alters it. So we've got to get everybody to have these discussions to start having a different perspective on it. Standardizing project delivery, not the individual project. Standardizing project delivery is how organizations deliver projects in the context of portfolios and resource management and governance and all of those components. So absolutely agree with everything you had just said. It's just changing some of the contextual understanding of it.
I love it. I love it. I really like that, Joe. And actually a bunch of people are saying how much they've loved it as well. Unfortunately, we're kind of up at the top of the hour.
That's it, yeah.
So you know, a little bit like an NPR news station, we'll do the thing. If you've been affected by the issues of discussed on the show, who are you going to call? We're going to call Joe, right? So Joe, these are your contact details.
Any way you want to get a hold of me, I'm easy to reach.
Excellent.
I'm not hiding. I'm out there for the world to connect with me.
Absolutely. And if project prioritization is something that's a roadblock in your business, do reach out to us. There's just heaps of best practice information on our website that you can access for free, and start to learn about the right ways and the wrong ways. There are so many methods and frameworks out there that people promote online that really are not founded in research and aren't really founded in practice that works and is effective. So if you head over to our website, there's a bunch of stuff that just talks about how to do it, how not to do it, and as Joe said, some of the little steps that you can take that will really help make a good process, like getting buy-in. You had a couple of people talking about how do you get buy-in from the executive team, and how do you build criteria and that makes sense and all that kind of good stuff. So if you head over to our website, which is transparentchoice.com, there's heaps of information there, or reach out to me on LinkedIn, or any other way that you feel like reaching out. We love helping people with these problems. So I'm sorry we didn't get to everybody's comments, but thank you very much for joining us. There is a recording, yes, and we will share that. Normally it takes a couple of days for the recording to be processed and just tidied up. So you should see that in just a couple of days' time. But thank you everybody for turning up. Joe, thanks a million. It's been, as usual, a blast. I can't believe an hour's gone by. And hopefully we'll get to do this again pretty soon. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.